Yo, what is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of People Problems, the podcast. People Problems is a podcast where every week we'll have a new guest on to discuss problems in their life. This week we have Jimmy Garcia. Jimmy plays saxophone, he builds ships, he is a history buff, and plays video games with the homies. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to People Problems, Jimmy Garcia. How you doing today?
I'm doing real good, and I'm very happy on the introduction. I feel like it represented me perfectly.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. Um, so like leading up to this, we talked about what you wanted to discuss on this.
Yeah, sure.
Um, so it was about the death of your brother at a
Yep.
really young age. So just kind of take me through like what that was like.
Well, you want the, I guess, whole story? I mean,
Sure, I mean we got plenty of
we
time.
got plenty of
We
time.
got
All right.
plenty of time.
So this was when I was uh, really young. I was around 5 or 6 years old, and I was in kindergarten. And this was back when I still lived in Rogers, Arkansas.
Yeah.
And I've I had two other brothers. One that's 5 years older than me, and my middle brother, which is the one that passed away, was only 3.5 years older than me. And by the time he was the age of 8 or 9, he started having some medical problems. And the the thing that surprised all of us, my mom, for the most part, that we didn't know,
Like what was going on?
yeah, we didn't know
Yeah.
we didn't know what was going on. We went to tons of doctors all around Northwest Arkansas, and some in Missouri, and they couldn't tell us anything. And so one day we go to Northwest in Bentonville, and
Like the hospital?
the hospital,
Yeah.
yeah. And we take my brother in because specifically that day he wasn't doing so well. We take him in, and then the doctor that was seeing him told us that we got to get him to Children's in Little Rock.
Did they tell you why, or just they
No,
had to?
this is urgent. We need to get him to Children's in Little Rock. And this was around 2000, late 2008, early 2009. And I remember the day that the doctor told us. My mom told me and my brother, and she just said that Carson, which is what my middle brother's name was, told told me that Carson has to go to Children's Hospital in Little Rock, and we might need to be staying there for a long time. And so, of course, at the time I was a kid. I was in kindergarten.
Yeah.
I had no idea what was happening.
Like what was really going
Yeah,
on?
I mean, as a kid, you just don't know. And I feel like my oldest brother, which is his name is Joshua, he didn't even know at the time until a little later about what was happening either. But and at Northwest, they have a helicopter that they took Carson in, and my mom flew with him, and we saw him leave to go towards Little Rock. And so me, my dad, and my brother Joshua, we got in a car and we drove straight to Little Rock. And that was the first time that I
You like realized?
that this is something that's might not turn out okay.
Yeah.
And that was the first time that I went to Little Rock, and it was the first of many that I would go there. And once my brother arrived at Little Rock, it took him like maybe an hour because helicopter in
Yeah.
there. And if you didn't know, Little Rock's a 3-hour drive, so it took my dad and us a little longer. And once we got to Little Rock at Children's, and if you ever been to Children's, it's a massive hospital. It's At the time, it was the biggest building that I've ever seen.
Yeah, it's huge.
It's a
Yeah.
huge hospital, and uh I spent so much time there that I can still, right now, 6 years later, or I can still
Like picture it.
picture it visibly. Remember every single hallway, like the lobby. I remember they had a little playground that me and Joshua hung out a lot, and on the floor that my brother was staying on, they had like a little courtyard in the middle, and it's a really nice hospital. I mean,
But obviously, like the reason why
yeah,
you're there.
yeah. Still at this point, I didn't know what I was doing here. I just knew that it was a serious problem because
Right.
we're in this huge city compared to
Yeah.
Rogers,
Just a like, total big difference.
big city,
Yeah.
and it's just like uncomparable to anything I've already seen because I don't travel a lot. I don't do a lot of things. I just stay in Northwest Arkansas, and yeah, so once Carson gets to the children's hospital, they take him to a room, and I'm always, for the rest of my life, I'm gonna remember the room number. It was room 11, and they take him in this bed, and this room is massive. It's like 6 times bigger than the room that we're in right now.
Yeah.
And that room, he would stay in that same room for around a year and a half.
Wow.
Where basically my mom lived there with him, and occasionally me and my brother Joshua would live there in the summers,
Yeah.
But then during school, my dad would drive us back to Rogers almost every other day, and we would come back to Little Rock.
So you would just go back and forth between them.
back and forth,
Yeah.
and that's a long drive going
Yeah,
back and forth, 3
for
hours.
sure.
And so I remember all the doctors there. They're honestly really great people, and I'm sure if I went up there today, they would still remember me if they still worked there. And I remember they helped me a lot, going through all this.
Yeah.
And I wish I could see him today so I could just, hug them and say thank you. But, so, once my brother was at the hospital in Children's, this is, late 2008, and I remember that day that my mom told me and Joshua that my dad is gonna take me back to Rogers to keep going to school. And so that same day, my dad drove me and Joshua back to Rogers. And I'm sure my dad was trying to explain what was happening.
But you just like couldn't.
I mean, I could understand him. Maybe Joshua could, but I couldn't. And what I remember Joshua telling me this, years later, that what my dad told Joshua in the car was that when my dad was little, back in El Salvador, where he was born, my grandpa, my dad's dad, just when my dad was around 14, my grandpa, he just around like the same thing that happened to Carson, just randomly, he just got really, really sick.
Yeah. Just kind of like switched up.
And even then they didn't know what was going on, and of course this was in the 80s. So
Right, so-
and in a third world country.
So health obviously.
Health wasn't the best.
Yeah.
And my dad told me that his dad passed away when he was 14 or 15, and that they didn't know what was going on with my grandpa, and he just died so randomly, and then
And so at
my
this
dad-
time, do they still not know like what's going on with your brother?
at this time, no.
Okay.
They don't. And the closest thing they give us is leukemia. That's it's not exactly, but that's what the doctor said, that it was leukemia.
Yikes.
And this was like months later. He spent in that hospital bed months before they told us anything. And so that was basically me and my brother's daily commute, going back and forth to Little
Just
Rock,
driving going
back
to
and
school
forth.
and then driving back and everything.
Yeah, just so we could see our brother and my
Right.
mom. And so, that went on for months and months until the and I would like to say that my what we found that was really nice is that my kindergarten teacher, which now I call her my aunt Nini, because she was my Carson's kindergarten teacher, because we all went to the same school, Matthias and Rogers.
Yeah.
And she was also Carson's kindergarten teacher all those years ago, and she was my kindergarten teacher as well. And she helped me and my family tons. She even came down to Little Rock one time to see my brother Carson.
Wow.
And now we still talk to her because she helped us a ton. Like after school, waiting for our dad, knowing that she knew that my brother was at Children's in Little Rock, and she knew that my dad would always drive back and forth, so she would let me and my brother just stay in her room and play around with the Legos together. And so I remember during Thanksgiving break, my kindergarten year, that the last day of school, it was again one of those days where she would let me and my brother stay after school a little later to wait for my dad. And I remember that day that after school we stayed in my kindergarten teacher's room and we played around. And so when my dad got here, he said that we're gonna spend Thanksgiving break in Little Rock with my mom and Carson. And when I tell you my mom, she used to work with Walmart, and she told Walmart, I guess, everything, and they just let her,
So she was there the whole time?
She was in Little Rock for a year.
Oh, wow.
A year. And her job, do what you need.
Yeah.
We understand. And so, but my dad was still working at the at a warehouse in Bentonville, but they didn't let him leave, so he would have to leave every weekend. But that's besides the point. So my dad said that we had to stay in Little Rock for Thanksgiving break, and we're driving there right now, right after school, a straight 3-hour drive to Little Rock. And by the time, if we ever go down that road ever, I remember everything.
Yeah.
I've been down that highway so many times that it's just like a daily commute now.
Yeah, you don't even need like a map or anything. You can just go straight there.
Just know it I'm sure if I drove down there, I would just know it by heart.
Yeah.
And so that 3-hour drive was, just a normal drive. And once we got to Little Rock, we go up to the Children's, and we go up to my brother's room, and my mom says that she tells my dad that it's not going too well, and that my brother has been through several stages of chemo, and that we're gonna have to stay here, a lot longer. And by the time this is 6-7 months in, and she said that the hospital has set up they have little houses right by the hospital for the families of the kids.
Oh, to stay in and everything?
I remember the one at Children's. It was called the Ronald McDonald's house, and that's where my brother and I and my dad, that's where we stayed. And I remember the first day that we stayed. Me and my brother we made a pillow fort because they had really big massive pillows, and we just had a pillow fight, and that was really nice. And we stayed at that Ronald McDonald's house for the 2 weeks of Thanksgiving break, and that was really nice that we were able to stay there, and this was all free, of course, because the doctors,
right,
the hospital, let us
provides it and everything.
Yeah. Yeah, and then a couple nights we would stay at the in the waiting area for the for that floor, because each floor they have a separate, I guess, waiting area
Okay.
for each of the rooms. And a couple nights we would stay up there, and of course, being a kids hospital, it's really colorful, and it has
Right. Yeah.
a bunch of aquariums
It's
with
like
the
kid
fishes.
welcoming. Almost,
Yeah, very kid welcoming. So they don't understand what's what's going on.
Right.
And it just comforts them. And I remember in one of the closets, they had a bunch of board games, and my favorite, which was Sorry, where you would take the little game pieces and throw them against each other, and it would knock them down. So me and my brother, we would just throw all of them in the middle, and with one, we would see who would. We wouldn't play the game by the rules, of course,
Right.
but we would just throw one and see who could get the most.
Who could knock the most down?
Yeah, knock the most down, separate them out. And I remember we played that tons, and that was the first time that I played Monopoly too. My brother showed me how to play Monopoly. And I played with my dad and my brother. And so, I remember in that waiting room there was a massive window. There a massive window, and they had chairs where you could see and look out. And in Little Rock, it's a pretty massive city, and this hospital is massive.
Right.
And they had a really nice window where you could see down into Little Rock. And I remember from the hospital, and even from my brother's room too, you could see the Arkansas State Capitol building.
Yeah.
So that was really nice. And my dad took me there a couple times because he knew even at that time I loved history. I loved learning about it. And that was like my little Washington D.C. because the Arkansas State Capitol building looks like the actual Capitol building. So that was nice. And of course, there was doctors there that would also play with us on their free time, and that was really nice. I remember one in particular. His name was Dr. Jim, and he was a bit. He was a really awesome guy, and he was a bit of a magician, which I'm sure he learned it on the internet. But
right.
I didn't know that.
Right.
He was really good. I remember specifically he had this little magic notebook where he would show me that he would draw in it, and then seconds later he would flip through it and he would be like, "Where did the drawings go?"
And it would be gone.
Yeah, it would be gone. And I'm always gonna remember. I remember that so clearly. It was a book with water and a ship on it, and then I'm pretty sure it was just a normal notebook, but I loved it. I'm pretty sure he just flipped it over and then. But I loved it. I loved that guy. That guy was amazing. We played board games with my brother and I a lot of times too. And I remember they had a lot of other programs where the siblings of the kids that are in the hospital were able to I guess play around and
stuff to get their minds off of it.
Yeah, stuff to get their minds off of it. And I remember one of them was a little bingo game with all the other siblings of kids in the hospital, and it was in this random room in next to the courtyard in the middle. And I remember that day so vividly because I won, and I got a Jack Sparrow action figure and a box of little plastic ships, and I played with it all the time while I was at the hospital. And again, at this time it was around mid 2009 now, and we pretty much lived there. And over Thanksgiving, which is I guess where the story ended, that was just Thanksgiving. We stayed at the hospital, and of course my mom told my dad that it wasn't going too well. But I remember she wouldn't tell that to us because she knew that we wouldn't understand. But we would always see my brother in the hospital room with all the wires attached to him and everything, all the IVs.
Yeah.
And it was really scary because
did you know?
No, I had no idea.
No idea.
It was just.
So you just see all this stuff strapped to him.
Yeah, and it was really scary because I remember thinking Carson, he's so strong that he's able to take all this stuff.
Yeah.
And no, I was really really proud of him that he was able to do that. And and that was constant for months that it was like that. And then around 2009, and this is going on into my first grade year, right? So it's already been a year, that he's been in the hospital in Little Rock, and this was mid 2009. I remember because me and my dad were waiting for the World Cup
Oh
in
yeah.
South Africa for 2010, and that's pretty much all I remember from 2009. It was pretty much the same exact thing of 2008, just going back and forth to the hospital
Yeah.
and stuff. And then 2009 Christmas break, we go down there for all of Christmas break again, and we stay there. And I remember that once we went down there, we went to a McDonald's. My dad, me, and my brother, and it was the weirdest McDonald's. It was a 2-story McDonald's.
What in the world?
And back then they had this really huge sandwich called an Angus
Oh yeah,
Angus
yeah,
sandwich.
Yeah.
And so I asked my dad for one of those, and he said, "Okay, I bet you're not gonna eat all of it though." And dude, I'm telling you, this is the best sandwich ever. It's just hamburger with mushrooms, and I love mushrooms, and I ate all of it. And he was like, "Whoa, that was really random," but I remember that. That was nice. And we go to the hospital, and usually what would happen is that my dad and my mom would stay in the same room with my brother Carson, room 11, and me and my brother would just go around exploring the hospital. And again with food, I remember that the hospital cafeteria, they had a really good chicken sandwich, a really good chicken sandwich, and it was a massive cafeteria too. And where me and my brother's favorite spot to play was that little outside playground portion, right? And it was really cool. It had like a rock climbing wall. It had like tunnels that you could crawl through, and like a ship you could drive. And I loved it.
Right. Honestly.
Yeah. And so this time it was actually the first time over Christmas break that they let my brother off of all the machines, and they let him walk around with one of those
Like walkers.
with a walker.
Yeah.
And I guess this was the first time in years that we were able to play with my brother again.
Yeah.
And
What was that like?
It was amazing because me and Joshua thought, oh, it's working. It's working, and maybe we're gonna see out of this with my brother going home with us, right?
Yeah.
And I remember the first thing that we did was while he was on the walker, we went down to the little courtyard area, and we painted with him, and of course I drew a ship, and he my mom tells me that Carson was really smart. He was a really smart kid, and he could do anything. And if all this never would have happened, he would have been out there today doing something great with his life. And I remember what he painted was just a bunch of random colors on the page, and it was just a bunch of random colors on the page. It didn't make anything in particular. It was just a splotch of paint, right? And this painting, we have it hanged up at my house, right? And that time I thought it was kind of weird because Carson was a really really good painter or drawer. He used to love drawing Pokemon characters. We had a book that he would sketch from, and I still have all those drawings. And I found it really weird that he didn't draw something like that. That he just threw a splotch of paint on a thing, and that really made me wonder what was going on. And at this time, of course, I still, my mom didn't explain it to me in particular because I was in first grade, and and I still wouldn't understand what was happening. But yeah, that painting, we have it framed up in my house today in honor of my brother, and um, that was the first and the last time that we were able to walk around with him in the hospital. And that same day, they let us take him outside to eat dinner at a restaurant in I remember it was by a highway close to Little Rock. It was this barbecue place, and and I remember that me and Joshua argued about getting a hot dog and a corn dog. And of course, I said a corn dog, and my brother was like, "No, hot dogs are better." While my brother was just sitting there eating his chicken strips. And that night we had to take him back to the hospital, and that would be the last ever time that we be able to, take him out and go do stuff with him. And so we take him back to the hospital, and since this is like New Year 2010, we take him back to the hospital, and then we spend New Year's there, and me and my brother go back to Rogers for school, and then I guess life just goes on with the same back and forth, going back and forth to Little Rock, and our school year goes fully done, and in June, just like every summer before, we go drive to Little Rock and stay there for the summer. And this was like our I think third summer staying there in Little Rock with my brother. And still at the time, my mom never left my brother's side. Always in the hospital room with her. In the with him. And it would just be my dad that would come back and forth, right? And summer of my, I guess, summer of my first grade year, summer of 2010.
Yeah.
And I remember because, that was the World Cup, and my dad and my brother, we love soccer, so we were excited to watch, the World Cup in South Africa. And even at when we got to Northwest Children's, we would sit in the guest room watching the soccer games between the countries during the World Cup. And I remember watching the final game between, I think it was Spain and Italy, and watching the final game in the same room that we drew with him, that we painted with him. I was there with my brother and my dad, and we just, I guess, watched the World Cup, and then we would constantly we would keep going back and forth from the rooms and then go explore. And then I remember after that final game, we went up there to my brother's room to, I guess, go celebrate. And my mom was there, and she was there with doctors standing next to Carson. And so my dad just went in, and till this day, I don't know what they were saying to my mom and dad, but I'm sure it wasn't good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So me and my brother just went up to the guest room to go play board games. And fast forward to like second grade. Summer passes by, and during November, a couple weeks before a couple weeks before Thanksgiving break, my dad checks us out of school to go to Little Rock, and just a normal drive down there to Little Rock. We've done it, hundreds of times, right? And we get to Little Rock. We get to Children's, and we go up there to room 11, and Carson and my mom is there, and we were all there as a family, and that was the last time we would, or at least me and Joshua would see Carson alive, I guess. And sorry. Oh, we just told him that we loved him and that we were very proud of him. And by the time I was in second grade and my brother was ending his fifth grade, in his fifth grade year, and we just, at this point, I kind of had an idea on what was happening, and I'm sure my brother did too. And we just told him that we loved him and that we were so proud of him for fighting through whatever this is. And of course, at this time, still we still have no idea what was happening. Wow. That again, the doctor said the closest was leukemia, and so we just tell him that we're proud of him and that we love him. And then at this point, right before this, of course we didn't know it was the last time that he would see him.
Yeah.
Because this was just gonna be a normal, chemo thing that they were gonna do, and so they took him out of the room and they did all that in a different room. And then my mom went in with him, and so me and my brother and my dad were in the same. We're in room 11, and they just took Carson out, right? For chemo, and we're just in there, and I was playing on a computer. I was playing cool math games on a computer that was able to slide out, and you could play on it like a little TV. And then my mom comes back in the room, and she tells me and my brother to sit on the couch that they had in there. And she told me that that today we just have to let the angels take Carson. And of course, I remember at that moment, at that moment I didn't cry immediately, because I just sat there with a blank expression, and I was just thinking to myself, what? And I don't know why I remember this so vividly, but I remember I looked outside, and there was a window that was over the door, and I remember seeing a doctor peek his head in, and I remember seeing him just look at us inside, and once he saw me looking at him, he just turned away. And then I don't know, at that moment it just clicked in my head that my brother passed away. And of course once my mom told me that, my brother started crying immediately, and it took me a little bit, like I said, until I saw that doctor, and for some reason at that moment I realized that
Kind of clicked.
It kind of clicked that my brother passed away in that room while they were doing the leukemia, and it was just really, it was just really, really hard, because I thought, I guess that's it. I mean, I knew I was never gonna see because I knew what death was.
Yeah.
I knew that I was never gonna see my brother again, and all this was over, and my dad and my mom were in the room with us, and they just comforted us, and then the doctors came in, and they did what they do, what their spiel that they give you once you someone dies, and that it was hard, and this was lasting since late 2008, and it was 2010 now.
Wow.
And at that moment my life would change instantly, and that I would only have one brother now, which was Joshua.
Did that strengthen your guys' bond between each other?
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely. But I'm since, of course, he knew Carson better than I did, because they
we're closer in age.
They were a lot closer in age, so I'm sure my brother took it way harder, and if he was sitting right here next to me, he would tell his side of the story, that I'm sure he knew what was going on.
Yeah.
And I'm sure he my dad would try to comfort him all the time, and to this day, that he, unlike myself, he's not very open about it. He, I've never asked him what's his side of the story, because I feel like he won't be able to tell it to, and I'm sure he's never told it to anyone else, because this was his brother, this was his best friend, that he played with for 4 years before I was born, and it's just hard when you see a family member on a medical bed, and you know that you can't do anything. It's really up to the doctors and chance, of course, and it's just hard to see them there, knowing that you can't do anything to help them. But
was that the hardest part for you?
Definitely, of course, yeah, and with my brother's death, it really stuck with me as well too. Of course, because even in school, sometimes I spent a lot of time in the counselor's office, because I still went to Matthias.
Yeah.
And they would know what was going on. And then finally, in the middle of going in I think third grade, I would move to Bentonville and start going to this brand new school that it was like a new leaf, starting at this brand new school, which they didn't know anything that would happen.
Yeah.
And
was that kind of good for you, or?
I thought of it like a good thing, because at that point I wasn't really open to
be sharing about it.
Yeah. I wouldn't share about it whatsoever. Only occasionally I would go to the counselor's office and stuff, but I didn't like to share it like I would be doing right now.
Yeah.
And this would go on until I remember at Barker Middle School, my 6th grade year. I remember I had a teacher named Miss Webb, I think, and she was my English teacher. And she gave us this prompt about, I'm pretty sure it was about family or something. And I remember writing about, I guess, my life story and about my brother's passing. And I remember I was tearing up when I handed the paper in to her. And of course she was asking, Jimmy, what's wrong? And I would say, no, nothing,
Yeah.
nothing's wrong.
Just kind of play it off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Play it off. And so I remember the next day, she set me aside and she talked to me about because she read it.
Yeah.
She read the little story that I wrote for her. And I remember she sent me to the office. To the office when I went to go talk to the counselor. And I talked to the counselor for I think about an hour, telling her about everything. And I remember me and her played Jenga together to to help calm me down. And at that point, that would be the last time that I would talk to a counselor about anything relating to my brother, because at that point she helped me I guess calm me down about it and everything. And at that point I didn't really need to talk to a counselor, because I feel like she helped me out, and she made me realize that that of course you don't want to forget it, right?
Right.
But she told me that there was nothing you could have done. It was I was up to chance, and you just have to remember him, of course, but you can't ponder about something for so long and let it affect you like this. And I remember thinking, that's right. And then until that, I never, I really didn't tell anyone the story about my brother. I never even told people that I even had another brother until I guess I'm really good friends with him. Like, of course, I told you.
Yeah, I didn't know about this till
Yeah.
like freshman year.
Yeah, when people would ask me, "Oh, do you have siblings or anything?" I would just say, "Yeah, I have one sibling, and he's a lot older than me." But I would never tell him that I had two, and one passed away, because that just that.
Was it just hard to like say that, or like what was the reasoning behind?
I guess I just didn't want people to know what I've been through.
Okay.
I guess.
Yeah.
And if I didn't know them, why should they know?
Right. Yeah, for sure.
And so
was it like you wanted people that you could like trust?
I guess I would only tell that to people that I fully know that they're my friend, and I know that they're gonna be my friend for a while. And I really didn't feel a need to tell anyone about all the stuff that I've been through. And so I really just never talked to anyone about it ever. And if they were close enough to me, I would just tell them that I actually had I had two brothers at one time, and one passed away. So, but after that counselor's talk, I just realized that it's over. All the pain and all the suffering, it's over. And I mean, it happened, and there's nothing you could change about it happening. It happened, and it's something you have to live with. And so at that point I was like, it's hard to explain, but I just realized that I don't want to say I was like desensitized to it, because that doesn't feel right. But I guess a feeling like that. That I was
Okay.
desensitized. But
So for people who have lost like a sibling
mhm.
or like a really close like family member, like what advice would you give them living through this? Like what would you tell to them if you could speak to them right now?
Well, if if I was able to go back in time and talk to my second grade self, I would tell him that, you know, I would tell him that everything's gonna be okay,
Yeah.
and of course you're never gonna know the outcome, but I would just say remember to spend as much time with someone that you love as you can, because it's gonna sound cliche, but you know you never know
For sure.
when they're gonna be gone,
Yeah.
and that eventually, eventually this is all gonna be over, and all the pain and suffering is gonna be over too, and one day it's not gonna it's not gonna I guess affect you as bad as it is now, and it's gonna be okay. And that's what I would say to a little kid that's losing a brother.
Yeah.
But I mean, I wouldn't be able to talk to someone
Right.
that's losing like
Yeah.
a father or a mother.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even give myself the right to talk to someone like that, because that's nothing that I could. That's nothing that I've been through. I lost my brother, and not like saying that's nothing, but I would it would have been, death is horrible no matter what, but if it's someone that, if it's your mother or your father, I feel like it would be different than losing a sibling. And so um I would I wouldn't even, I would only talk to people that need advice, that if it's a sibling or like a close friend, but I feel like I wouldn't be able to talk, like give any
Yeah.
reason to
Just
someone
because
that's
you
lost.
hadn't like lived.
I haven't lived
Yeah.
through something like that, and I hope to God that I never lived through something like that when I'm a child. So I, that's what I would say to a little kid that's losing their sibling or a close friend.
I don't have anything else really.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, the questions I had, you pretty much answered in your
Oh, my little
story.
story.
So,
Yeah.
unless you have anything else that you wanted to say.
I feel like this has been a learning experience
Yeah.
for the both of us, because this is the first time that I've known you for a long time, and
This is the first time like
that
I've actually
you've
heard
heard
about it. Yeah.
everything, and you're the first person that I've ever told that's other than a counselor, but that's
It's
a
a
friend, man.
hard story.
I mean, it's tough.
It's tough to listen to, not in a bad way. It's just like,
Yeah, it's real life, and
yeah,
I mean, everyone is gonna go through losing a family member at some point in their lifetime. But I guess that, for me, it just happened a lot earlier than it was supposed to, and that's gonna impact me for the rest of my life. And I'm always gonna have in the back of my head that I've been through all of this, going back and forth to Little Rock, and watching my brother just, I guess, die before my eyes. And but I feel like it's made me a stronger person. I don't like to show a lot of people my true emotions, right? Because I went through all of that, but I feel like it's made me a stronger person, and I mean, I don't know what else to say. I think at this point, I I realize that it's okay to talk to people
yeah,
that aren't adults, that I can talk to my friends, and they'll be able to, I guess, calm me down, right? And it's been a major learning experience that it's okay to talk to friends about this thing. And so, yeah, thank you.
yeah,
Thank
for
you,
sure.
Kason,
For sure.
yeah And thank you for I guess listening to
Executive
all this.
executive producer Stuart Pollock.
Stuart, thank
Thanks
you.
for coming out,
Thank
guys.
you.
Thank you for listening to another episode of People Problems Podcast. You can obviously be watching on YouTube, People Problems Podcast, or listen wherever you find podcasts. Follow us on Instagram at People Problems Podcast to know when we make a new podcast. I wanted to thank you for coming out.
Yeah.
And yeah, thank you for
Thank
sharing
you.
your story.
Thank you.